Alright, let's try this again. Hello, and welcome to the channel, or back to the channel, whichever one applies to you. Um, doesn't feel right without the hood. My name is Kai, and I am once again... What the fuck is that? I just saw something like streak by me really quickly. Um, I'm gonna try once again to start making a video series going over what I remember of my life. Um, I'm going to try to avoid including anything that others have told me happened in my life. Although some things will be relevant, even though I don't exactly remember them. Um, I'm doing this as I explained, I think, in my intro video to the channel, that I'm doing this as a way to try and not only catalog my memories in chronological order as much as I can, but in an attempt to remember the things that I don't currently remember. So I have some pretty significant memory gaps from my early childhood. There are memories that are just straight up not there, or just completely repressed, I think. Um, I'm going to start out doing these videos in 5-year increments. So this one is going to be from birth until around age 5. My goal for the end of this video is it will end at the time that I started kindergarten, and then the next video will pick up from uh, where this one left off, and so on and so forth. This is my third time now, not today, but in the last week, but second time today, sitting down and trying to record this. The one that I was recording, I recorded it about 12-13 minutes on just a little bit ago. On my phone, I have an option when I'm recording a video to pause the recording, and then I can start recording back from the time period where it left off. And so I've been having issues for months with bees getting into my room, and then I have to go and find a way to get them out of my room without killing them. And so I'd already had one earlier that I got out before I started recording, and then while I was recording, I heard another one flying around. So I paused the video to try and locate it and get it out of my room. And then when I did locate it, it turned out that it had managed to fly into a spider web. And so I unpaused the recording and explained what was going on, and then I paused it again with the intention of coming back after I knew whether or not the bee had gotten out of the web, because I am a firm believer that when things like this happen, it is part of the natural order, and it is not my place to get involved, generally. So I wasn't going to take the bee out of the web and put it outside unless it got out of the web on its own. If it got out on its own, cool, I'll get it out because it's just going to be pissed anyways, and I don't want a pissed off bee in my room. So I repaused the recording so that I could watch it and see what happened. And then apparently, I didn't know this, I just found out, apparently there is a certain amount of time, which I'm not too sure what it is, that that the recording can be paused for, and then after that certain amount of time, it just stops the recording altogether. So like, I just decided to delete the recording and start again because, as I've said before, I like to keep things like this raw and unedited. One, because I hate editing videos in general. It is not something I find any pleasure in. And two, I just think that, especially with like the topics that I talk about, which are more nuanced, more deep, generally more deep, and more personal, that, you know, there should be an element of me being a human, me making mistakes, tripping over my words, not remembering things, just generally being imperfect. Because all human beings are imperfect, and I think that instead of trying to get to perfection, that we should just kind of embrace the fact that we are imperfect and work on doing the best we can, with that kind of limitation of being imperfect. So with that being said, throughout this process of me making this video series and posting it, besides certain very, very personal details, I'm going to try my best to be as transparent and honest and whatnot about everything that I'm talking about, you know. Because if I'm gonna do this, and if it's going to benefit me at any point in the future, I have to be truthful. I have to be honest. I have to be transparent. Otherwise, I do myself a disservice, and I kind of like make the whole thing pointless. So there's certain things that I won't talk about in this, just because, one, there's certain like there's certain things that have happened in my life that are heavily polarized nowadays, especially on social media, and I'm not at a place, and won't be for quite a while, where I can handle that sort of backlash. If I ever do get to a point where I can handle that backlash, I will make a video about those things that are being omitted. And then there's going to be moments throughout this video series where I talk about some pretty awful things that I've done in my past. And I am going to do my best to explain the motivations behind that. Where the fuck did that bee go? It was just in the web. I think it fell out. But it's not going to last very long. I saw that spider all over it. The spider definitely got quite a few bites in, so yeah, that bee's done for, unfortunately. Sorry. Anyways, ADHD. So like I was saying, I did some awful things that I should have never done, that I'm not proud of, that I will be including in this video series, and I'm going to do my best to explain, not excuse, not refuse to take responsibility for or accountability for. I'm going to be using very clear language that indicates my acceptance of responsibility and accountability, and um and all that good stuff. But I am also going to try to explain what motivated me to do these things, um what was going on in my life that led me to being able to do or say these things in the first place. Um and it some of it's not going to be pretty. Some of it is stuff that I don't I don't know if I can say I regret it. Um in a way, like, that sounds awful, and is going to sound even more awful when, like, you get to the point where you're hearing the things that happened, uh because you're going to hear some of these things and be like, how can you not regret that? But I generally have almost nothing that I regret in my life that I have done, mainly because even with the most awful, heinous things I did, um the I'm not proud of them at all. Like, don't get me wrong, I never should have done those things. I never should have. Like, no one should ever do some of the things that I did. But they did happen, and for a while after some of these things happened, I did regret them. I 100% did regret them. It took me a long time to get to the point I am at now today, where I can say truthfully that there's very minimal things that I've done in my life that I truly regret doing to this day, simply because even some of the more awful things I did, facing those things and eventually holding myself accountable for them, accepting responsibility for them, um, doing the things I needed to do to, like, doing the things I needed to do with the people that were involved to kind of, to show that I was accepting the responsibility, not just to them, but to myself, um, led me to a point in my life where I still am not super happy with who I am currently. I have plans on how I'm going to change these things, but they led me to mindsets that I never would have gotten to otherwise, where I I try to treat everyone I meet with decency and respect and care and compassion and understanding, because even the people who throw insults at me, who treat me like shit, I've been in places where I did those things. I've been in places in my life where that felt like the only option, um, even when it wasn't. And I understand that this person I meet on the street who comes up to me and calls me some kind of, like, slur, or, like, has a disagreement with me and gets really hostile, like, I don't know what's going on in their life that's led them to this point. Like, they could be dealing with something in their home life that this is the only way that they know how to, you know get that negativity out of them, to get it away from them so that they don't have to feel it so much. And, it's not okay. It's not okay for them to be doing that. But I understand that there's something underlying these actions that I don't know about, that I can't know about unless I ask them and they tell me, that is driving that action. Um, so like you'll see, and I'll explain more as when I get into those things. But those won't be for another couple videos in this series. Most of them happened in my teens, like my late teen years. Um, and for the timeline stuff, I'm only able to do 5-year increments up until about 20 years old. Because around that time, my life started to get really like insane and chaotic. And like so like my video for 5 to 10 years old, so you take that video that I'm going to record and the length of it, and then from 20 to 25 years old, that 20 to 25 years old video is likely going to be like somewhere around 3 times as long if I try to record it in the 5-year increment format that I'm doing. Like 3 years, or like 3 times as long as the 10 to 15 or the 5 to 10, whatever. So those videos are probably going to be broken into like 1 to 2 year increments starting from around 20, just to make it easier on me, especially since I'm not editing anything and I don't want to be putting out like 4+ hour videos. I don't think my phone could handle recording a video that long. So yeah. Anyways, let's get into my life, I guess. I don't even know what I'm going to call this video. I'll figure it out. So from birth, I was born in Belton County, Texas, December 20th, 1998. Let's see. There's going to be quite a few pauses like this where I actually have to like really go through and like go back and figure out like what the memories are, where they're at, around how old I was. So obviously I don't remember my birth. I don't remember like leaving the hospital or anything like that, because little bitty baby infant, Um the first memory that I have is when I was still living with my mother. I was very young. I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 years old, maybe 4. So somewhere between 2 and 4 years old. I'm not entirely sure which, but the memory is me, like little me, in these like Superman footy pajamas with the cape and everything, and I was running down the hall to a man that was coming home. We were in a So we had this like apartment building that was a like like a 2-story house with like the stairs on the outside to give access to the apartment directly. We were on the second floor apartment. I remember, oh shit, ember from my cigarette. So I remember being in these pajamas and running down a the dark hallway to a man who was coming home. I'm not too sure who the man was. It was either my biological father, um, who I didn't really have a relationship for a long time as a kid, and who I don't have a relationship with now, or, and I don't think this is the most likely one, it may be the one. I could check with him later, but the man who I call my dad now is actually my brother's dad, like his biological father. So it was either my biological father or this man who I call my dad. Um, and I'm not going to use real names and for any of the people in my life in these videos. Instead, I will either use the like first letter of their name or I will make up a name for them. Excuse me. Monsters always make me burp quite a bit, and it's weird burps. Um, so my biological father, I'm gonna call BF for uh. Actually, you know what? Yeah, no, I'm just gonna call him BF for biological father for the entirety of this series. Um, I don't even want to give him the decency of coming up with a fake name, but I also don't want to be super like petty or bitter about it. I don't want to put that energy out right now. So it was either BF or um my dad, who I guess I'll just call my dad. And so I ran to him, jumped into his arms, gave him a hug, and then he held me in like the horizontal like Superman position and like ran me through the air uh so it would feel like I was flying like Superman. Um and then that's the end of the memory. And then the next memory I have after that is um I never really had many friends growing up, and especially when I was living with my mother. Um until we got to this one place that she was living at, which was like government housing. Um I didn't have any friends that would ever come over and play with me, so I ended up playing by myself a lot in my room. Um, and so this memory and like most of what I would play with were like the really old, cheap, like Hasbro games from and toys from like the mid to late '90s. So like Mr. Potato Head and um like the I don't know if any of you remember it, but there is this like game where it was like different like caterpillar body pieces with like these yellow arms and legs and eyeballs and stuff, and it was, I think it was a game. Like, I think it was like a game where like you drew cards that told you what pieces to grab and whatnot. But I just, because I was playing by myself all the time, I never really like understood or knew how to like play the games the way that they were meant. So I would just play with these things however I wanted, make different configurations and stuff. And the caterpillar one, I actually just now remembered when I was thinking about these Hasbro games and toys. But this memory, the next memory after the Superman pajama memory, um, was one of those games, and it was like you had this like little plastic pot, like a cauldron looking pot, and it was on a spit, and you could like spin it around and stuff, and it had these little like uh toy beans that you threw in there. I don't even know what it was called or how you were supposed to play it, but I remember like sitting there and like I would throw one bean in and then spin it, like start slow and then like spin it faster and faster and see what happened to the bean. And then like if it fell out, I would take it, throw it back in, throw another one in, and then do it again. And I think I was like, without understanding what I was doing at the time, I think I was like experimenting with physics, like trying to like learning what physics, like how the physics worked of this thing, um, which would make sense for me. Throughout my entire life, I've always been interested in different sciences, how things work, taking shit apart, trying to put it back together and make it work again. Um, so I was doing that, and that's the only memory I have. That's all I have of that memory, apparently, which is weird. I don't know why that specifically is still in my mind. Um, let's see. So now we kind of flash forward a little bit. I think I was like three or four. It. I want to say that memory was very, very shortly before I got enrolled in Head Start. Which, if you don't know what Head Start is, it's a program that was created in 1965. Um, it's a lot like pre-K, where it was a program designed for um, low-income families or like families down on their luck, for kids that were anywhere from infants to 5 years old could be in this program, and they were trying to prepare these kids to go into school. So you learn like basic reading stuff. Uh, they would take us out to the playground to like uh, for like enrichment uh, stuff, which I don't really remember going to playgrounds very often in Head Start. Not that it didn't happen, I just don't remember it. Um, you know, just generally doing the things that a kid needs while their parent goes to work and to make the money they need to support them and their kid. Um, and a lot of the people whose kids were in Head Start or pre-K, like were like single parents just trying to do the best they could to keep a house and under over their heads for the kids and food in the house and stuff. Um, and so I was in Head Start. Um, I don't really remember my first day of Head Start. I think I went into the program when I was 3 or 4, I think. Um, this is going to be a recurring pattern throughout these videos. Is I'm not entirely sure what age a lot of these memories happened at until we get to about 10, 11 years old. And then it starts to become like the older I get from there, the easier it is for me to remember how old I was in the memory, or during certain things. So I was 3 or 4 years old when I went into Head Start. I remember, I know this, like loosely know this because I know I was only in Head Start as far as I remember for like a year and a half to 2 years until I went into kindergarten. So what's my first memory? I do very vaguely remember. It's not a very like solid memory, but I do remember being in Head Start and like coming in for the morning. Oh, by the way, Head Start would also provide through the school they provided us with breakfast and lunch. So you went in pretty early. I think I would get there around 7 maybe in the morning. Mm-hmm. I don't know for sure. Anyways, this memory is very, very vague, very fuzzy. And I think this is the first memory I have of being in Head Start. But I had just come in for the morning, and I kind of remember looking around. There were a couple girls playing with like some dolls and stuff. Um, there was a kid with a book open on the floor, and uh, there were like there were a few other kids in there, but I don't remember what they were doing. Um, I think they might have been playing with each other or something. But I just remember looking around at all these kids and what they were doing, and I was like, none of this makes sense. Like, I watched the girls for a minute play with their dolls and stuff, and I just couldn't understand how they were getting enjoyment from playing with each other with these dolls and like the situations that they were coming up with. I didn't understand where they were getting these situations from, you know? Um, uh, and the kid that was like had the book open, it was like a hybrid picture, like storybook. So it was mostly pictures, but it had like sentences, like 1 or 2 sentences attached to each picture on each page. Um, and at this point, I could read, so like, I don't remember uh, when I started to read, but I have been told by my whole family that I was walking, reading, and having like full, like coherent conversations by the time I was a year and a half. Um, so I could read at this point, and I could read decently well. I remember walking up to the kid that had the book open on the floor, and he was like laying down looking at it and like flipping through the pages. I remember asking him um, what he was reading, and all these kids are like right around the same age as me. Like, there's maybe a few months difference between each of us. I think the biggest age gap was like a year between all of us. Like my best friend in Head Start was a year younger than me. Um, and so I went up to the kid and I asked him what he was reading, and he said, "Oh, I'm not reading the book. I'm just looking at the pictures. I don't know what it says underneath." And I was like, "What? You can't read that?" He's like, "No, I can't read. I'm like 3. I don't know how to read." And I remember thinking that was so weird because to me reading was just something natural. Like, I thought everyone knew how to read, you know? I didn't know it was a thing that you had to be taught at the time. And I ended up just going and like playing by myself or something for a while. Um Later I remember, what's the next memory I have? Okay. So the next memory I have is, wait, actually. Okay. So the next memory I have was one morning, got dropped off at Head Start. We went to the cafeteria for breakfast. And for breakfast that morning, we had oatmeal. And I remember telling one of the Head Start staff members, I was like, "I don't like oatmeal." They're like, "Have you ever tried it?" I was like, "No, but I am looking at it and I am smelling it and I can see what the texture looks like, and I'm not going to like it. I don't like it. I don't want to eat it." They're like, "Well, this is what we're having for breakfast, so you need to at least try it. Can you at least try a bite?" And I said, "Yes, I'll try a bite, but I'm not going to like it." And they're like, "Well, you have to eat something. And we're not going to just get you something else from what every other kid is eating." Mind you, Head Start and pre-K both ate breakfast at the same time at the same table. So not only was it my Head Start peers that were at this table, it was also the pre-K kids that this was like one of the only times we were ever around the pre-K kids. Like, we had 2 separate classrooms, and we weren't ever allowed to go into the pre-K classroom, and they were never allowed to come into our classroom. So I'm like, and they're like, "We're not gonna just give you something different than what every other kid is eating because that's not fair just because you don't like it." I was like, "Fine." So I took a single bite of oatmeal, and like right after I swallowed it, right after, and I had not been feeling sick before this moment, right after I swallowed that bite of oatmeal, I threw it back up into the bowl. Like, immediately. It was almost an immediate reaction. Like, and I remember like starting to cry, and I was like, "I told you I don't like it. I didn't want to eat it. Why did you make me eat this? It was so nasty. I don't ever want to eat this again in my life. Why did you do this to me?" And I can't remember, like, they took it away, they cleaned it up, they got me cleaned up. They called my mother. They checked my fever. My I didn't have a fever. My mother was like, yeah, no, he doesn't like oatmeal. Like, I tried to get him to eat it when he was like really young, like early, like younger than this or something like that, and he didn't like it. Um, and certain things he just does not like, and it's just how he is. And I don't remember exactly what it was that they brought me to eat instead of the oatmeal. We always had a fruit, at least one fruit, and we always had like a thing of milk. Which back then we had bagged milk, um, which is not really a thing outside of like Canada and like certain European countries anymore. Like it's not really a thing in the US at least. But we had like little like square bags of milk. Um, and and sometimes we would actually get the little tiny cartons of milk, depending on what they had at the time. Really small, like rural town. It's not. Is a town that's not in the county that I was born in. It wasn't really near any big cities, and so the school didn't really get a whole lot of funding. But I think they gave me one of those little square plastic bowls of cereal, and I had like a banana, and like it was. I remember feeling really, really embarrassed about this moment because, like, I always thought, for some reason, I don't know why, but I always thought that the pre-K kids were so much cooler than us Head Start kids because they had their own classroom that we weren't allowed into. And I was just so embarrassed that these pre-K kids saw me barf into my oatmeal because I didn't like the oatmeal and everyone else was eating it and had no issue with it. Um, 1 second. I gotta move shit out of the way on my bed so I can like stretch my legs. My knees are starting to hurt. Oh. So that was that memory. And then the next memory I have after that, and mind you, I have no idea the how long it was in between the first memory of Head Start that I told you and that memory, and I also have no idea how long it was in between that memory and this next one. But the next memory that I have is I was in the Head Start classroom. I think it was like mid morning, I think. Excuse me. It was like mid morning, I think, and me and my best friend, who at that point was my best friend in Head Start, we were like the two weirdest kids there for some reason, and that helped us really get along. Um, we were walking around. I think I was 4 or or 5 or had just turned 5, one of these. Um, and when I say he was a year younger than me, he wasn't like a full year younger than me, but in terms of like school ages, he was enough months younger than me that we were in different like great like classes after this. So like he went into kindergarten a year after me, like a school year after me. Um, so I'm gonna call him SL, which is the initials of what we called him. and what he preferred to be called, is his first and middle name. So SL and I were walking around the classroom, and I had noticed that he kept like every few minutes for like 10 or 15 minutes, he would like go like this until he pulled a single eyelash out. And then he would take it and like look at it for a minute and then throw it down. And like he would just do this every few minutes. And finally I was like, SL, what are you doing? Why are you pulling your eyelashes out like that? Does it not hurt? He goes, no, it doesn't really hurt. And I'm kind of doing an experiment. I want to see if my eyelashes will grow back like my hair does. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Let me know how that goes. And he said, okay. And then, yeah, okay. And then he did it again. And then that was when like one of the Head Start staff just happened to look over and check on me and him to see if we were doing okay. Right as he went like this and pulled it out, they came over and they were like, SL, you don't need to be doing that. That's not really like a good thing to do. And so he explained it to him, and they were like, yes, it's gonna grow back. Like, that's how hair works. Just, you don't need to be doing that. You need your eyelashes. And he was like, why? And I was like, yeah, why? What are they for? Why do we have these in the first place? And they were like, well, your eyelashes help keep dirt out of your eyes. I was like, really? They're like, yeah. And we were like, oh, that's cool. And then that's the end of that memory. Let's see. For some reason, my neck always starts hurting when I record these videos. I'm not entirely sure why. But yeah. So let's see, what's the next memory that I have? Oh. So this was a little bit after I think this was a little bit after that memory with SL. It started, and I'm calling this one memory, but it's kind of technically two, but they're in the same day and they're related to the same thing. I just don't remember what happened in between. So I'm gonna consider these the same memory. But this morning when I got dropped off at Head Start, the Head Start staff, who was my favorite staff and I absolutely loved, was talking to my mother, and I was like right there, just kind of listening and kind of acting like I wasn't listening, but I was, I was eavesdropping. And she was like, hey, meant to talk to you about this. Oh, God. Meant to talk about this yesterday when you picked him up. But I kind of forgot, and you also kind of seemed like you were in a hurry, so I didn't want to bother you. But did you know that your son can read? Like, read? My mother is like, yeah, he's been able to read for years. Like, he reads all the time. He reads road signs when we're in the car. She's like, y'all, it took y'all this long to figure it out? And she's like, well, I mean, we kind of picked up on him reading certain things, but we didn't think it was as developed as it is, like he can really read. My mother was like, yeah, he's a very very smart kid. Like very very smart. You have to be careful with him because he is so smart and clever. Like he will work you over if you let him. And she's like, okay. She goes, well, I I kind of want to have him do something if it's okay with you. And my mother's like, what do you want him to do? You know? And the staff member was like, well, I want him. I'm gonna call her Mrs. V. Um, I think that was her like the beginning letter of her last name was a V. So I'm gonna call her Mrs. V. And Mrs. V was like, well, he doesn't really play with the other kids. He'll be beside them, but playing on his own while they're playing and doing their own thing. And he doesn't really try to like play with them in any way. So I want to see if I can get him to engage with them in a different way where I have him read like basic kids books to them. And my mother is like, yeah, I think that's a great idea. Like, go for it. He'll probably enjoy it. He likes to read out loud, you know, and he likes to tell stories and stuff. And she's like, okay. And then later that day, I think after or around snack time, Mrs. V came up to me and she was like, hey, do you want to read the book at story time today? Like we we always read it, but if you can read and you want to read it, you're more than welcome to do it. I was like, sure, I don't care. Why not? All I do otherwise is just sit there and listen to you and eat my snack, and it's kind of boring. She's like, okay. So they let me pick the book. I can't remember what book I picked. It was one of those books like The Hungry Caterpillar or something, like one of those basic kids' books because I didn't think any of the other kids would be able to like understand anything more complex than a book like that since half of them couldn't fucking read anyways. So I picked a book like that and we sat down for story time and I read the book to them. And then I think I got an extra snack after. Like they pulled me aside and gave me an extra snack or something because they said I did such a good job reading the book. I don't know. Um, but yeah, and then oh, you know what? No, that's in kindergarten. I was about to say I did remember uh being on the playground quite a. Wait, was that in kindergarten? See, I this is why I struggle to do this because there's memories that come up that I can't remember when they happened. Like I know they happened and I know I was quite young and that I was on like for this I was on a playground, like I was at a playground, but I don't remember if it was like kindergarten, first grade, Head Start. Um I think the memory I'm thinking of was in first grade. But I'm not too sure. Um, oh, okay. I think I just remembered something else that's different. Um, a couple things actually. I think these are the last two things that I remember from being in Head Start. So this is going to be like near the end of the video. So the first one. So this happened after the story time uh, memory. So I remember not super vividly, but I remember, and I had done this a couple different times. Like I'm starting to remember now, but I had asked to go to the bathroom, and I had noticed that, like, I was trying. Let me preface this by saying I had tried multiple times to sneak into the pre-K classroom because I wanted to know what they were doing in there. Like, I knew what we were doing in our classroom, but I wanted to know what they were doing in there and why they never wanted me to be in there. You know, like I didn't understand at the time that it was a completely different program, with and that like they didn't want one of us getting in there and like disrupting that program. They didn't want one of them coming into our program and disrupting it. So I wanted to know, why don't they want me in there? Why don't they want me seeing what happens in there? Why don't they want us interacting with those kids outside of meal times and like playground times? So this time, I think I was like getting close to turning 5. Um, I think. And I had asked to go to the bathroom, and I'd noticed that I hear another fucking beat. Hold on, give me a second. What the fuck is that down there? Oh man, that bee sounds pissed. Y'all are just gonna have to wait a minute. So there's a possibility that I'm allergic to bees. As far as I know, I've never been tested for it, so I'm not entirely sure. Um, but I've always like shared like intolerances and like what triggers seasonal allergies with my aunt, and she's allergic to bees. So, um, thankfully, I've never been stung by a bee. And I don't want to find out today if I am allergic to them. So I gotta make sure that this bee is not going to find me and decide that I'm the reason it's pissed off and sting me. But I don't see it anywhere over there. So I don't know where it is. I can just hear it over there somewhere. I think it's in between a window and a curtain. Okay, let me get these memories out the way, and then I'm gonna go take care of this bee. So I had noticed that when we asked to go to the bathroom, that they would often either just let us go on our own if we knew where it was and we could go to the bathroom on our own, or they would walk us to the bathroom if we had issues like cleaning ourselves up or like going on our own. So I had asked to go to the bathroom, and they walked me to the bathroom. And then I went in there, I did my business, washed my hands, and then I listened at the door for a minute. Or, well, actually, no. So I went in, and before I did my business, I listened at the door to see if they left. And when they left, that's when I went, did my business, washed my hands, and then when I came out, I very quietly closed the bathroom door and snuck over to the pre-K door. And right as I was opening it to look inside, I heard someone. And so, for reference, in my school, in the elementary school, it was like segmented. Like there were like different sections of the school that were dedicated to different uh, age groups and like uh, and stuff. And so in the hallway that had the pre-K classroom, the Head Start classroom, and then kindergarten through I think third grade. Um, the way that it was set up was it would be like one classroom here on one side of the hallway, one classroom here on that same side of the hallway, and then like they were connected together by a hallway, like a little tiny hallway, and in that little hallway had the bathrooms for each classroom, um, and then a water fountain. So I, right as I was opening the door and like looking in, um, which I didn't really get to see much, and I don't remember what I saw. Uh, I heard the door from our classroom into this hallway open back up, and another student was being brought in to go to the bathroom. And the staff member was like, "Hey, what are you doing? You're not supposed to go in there." I shut the door real quick, and I was like, sorry. I don't know. I was just curious." And so they brought me back out, and that's all I remember. And then the last memory that I really for sure have of being in Head Start that wasn't told to me by someone else, um, is so I used to get in trouble a lot. It was really hard for me to like sit still and pay attention to things. Um, like harder than the other kids for sure. And I would, have tantrums a lot, and like it caused problems in the program, like in the classroom. And what they would do in this entire hallway, so pre-K, Head Start, kindergarten through third grade, what they would do for anyone who was causing disruptions in the classroom consistently is you would have to go out into the hallway and sit with your back against the wall for a certain period of time, and you couldn't move. You couldn't really talk too much, like you couldn't like be making sounds and stuff. um and so one day I had got sent out into the hallway, and you're just sent out there by yourself. There's not another staff member out there watching you. So you're just sitting out there by yourself, being bored as shit for however long. For me, it always felt like forever, but it was probably like 5 minutes, like nothing too crazy. And the kindergarten teacher was coming down the hallway back to her classroom from something. Um, and she would always like stop and talk to me for a minute. Like, I don't ever remember any other interactions with her, but I do remember her stopping and talking to me for a minute whenever I was sat out there, and like being like, why do you do these things? Like, the typical adult thing from like the early 2000s where they're like, they don't understand why you're being so disruptive, especially when, if you look back at it, I was showing symptoms of fucking ADHD and autism way back then, you know. Um, but this time, I remember this specifically because we had like a full conversation, and she like stood with her back, like leaning back against the opposite wall from me, and she was like, "You're out here again?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I got really bored and I went to go do my own thing and they didn't really like it, and I got upset that they wouldn't let me do what I wanted to do, and I threw a fit." And she's like, "Well, you're gonna have to learn to stop doing that. Next year you're going to be in my classroom, you're going to be in kindergarten, you're going to be in real school, and you can't be doing these things in real school. Like, you'll end up getting sent to the principal's office and all these things." And like, I'm remembering now that when I would be sitting out there in the hallway, sometimes she would bring me into her classroom, and like if they were making like the little like flip books to learn how to read that you could like take home and stuff, she would help me do one of my own, because I think that she recognized in some capacity that I just wasn't being challenged enough in Head Start, and that's part of why I was uh acting out and stuff. And so this time she was like, she told me that, she gave me that spiel, and I was like, I know, it doesn't feel like I can stop it. Like, it just happens, and like, I just get so bored. I don't know what else to do. It's so hard to just sit there. Hold on. Okay, sorry. I live out at my grandparents' house right now. I'm trying to get my feet under me, and I thought my grandmother. I heard her talking in the living room. So like, my room is a built-on room to our house, and the walls are super thin, and I can hear people talking in the living room, which is, so like, there's my door right there, and then you go out my door onto the wraparound porch, and then directly to the right is a glass sliding door that leads into the house, into the living room. So I heard my grandmother talking in there, and I thought she might be coming out to ask me something. Um. So, anyways, I was sitting there. She gave me this spiel about, you can't do that. I told her, and she goes, "Okay, well, do you want to do something out here?" I was like, "Well, yeah, but I'm in trouble. I can't. Like, I can't do anything. I just have to sit here." And she's like, "Well, let me go talk to your teachers real quick." So she went in, she talked to him, and she came back out, and she's like, "Okay, just sit here for a minute, and I'll be right back." I was like, "Okay." And so she went in, and she went into her classroom, and then she came back out with like a few pieces of paper, a pair of scissors, and like a stapler. And she's like, "Do you want to make a book?" I was like, "Sure. I don't have anything better to do right now." She's like, "Okay, well, your teacher said that we could do this if you wanted to, um, as long as you behave and you don't, act up." I'm like, "Okay." So she sat down with me and she helped me cut out the, cut out the little panels, and then like she let me figure out the order of them myself, and then she showed me how to staple them together. And actually, I think I was wrong about her bringing me into her classroom before this moment. I think that started happening after, when my Head Start staff members realized that what was happening was I was just not being challenged enough, and I was understimulated and I needed more. And but so she did that, got the book put together, and then like I was sitting there with it. She had gone and thrown away all the scraps of paper and put away the scissors and stapler. And then she came back out and I was just sitting there with it in front of me, and I was like, "So what what do I do now? What do I do with this?" She goes, "Well, you can take it home and you can read it to your mom, or do you want to read it right now with me?" And I was like, "Okay." And mind you, this was kindergarten material. Like this wasn't what most Head Start or like 2 to 3 year olds are like doing. So it had some words that I wasn't entirely sure about because I hadn't seen them in like day-to-day life really up until that point. But I was like, sure, let's read it. So went through and read it, and she helped me like understand some of the words I didn't understand. And it was like, I think the first like actual memory I have of a actual school teacher like being cool with me instead of just treating me like a problem, because some of the teachers in that hallway would like, some of them hated when the Head Start kids and pre-K kids were going to like lunch or something, because we didn't eat with like on the normal like school schedule. Like we had our own little schedule so that we weren't like causing a whole lot of issues in the cafeteria with all the rest of the students. And some of the like second and third grade teachers absolutely hated when we would go to a meal or to the playground, partially because that was one of the few times, like that transition period, where like I could walk around the way I wanted to instead of just stuck in a classroom. So like I would be literally like ping ponging myself off the fucking walls up the hallway, like spinning in circles as I went up, like peeking in every classroom, like talking super loud because I was super excited to be seeing these new things. And so like those teachers were always just like, man, like just shut up. Um, but yeah, uh, and then about a year after that interaction with the kindergarten teacher, you know, um, I do have a memory of going into the classroom at one point and like doing a worksheet and like starting to learn how to write before I went into kindergarten. I'm pretty sure that this was still when I was in Head Start. And like putting another book together. and then taken it home, but I don't have any memories really of what I did with it after. And then yeah, like about a year after like that, situation, that memory with that kindergarten teacher, I went into kindergarten. And so that's going to be the end of this video. If you are watching this and you have any like memories from like between your birth and 5 years of age that really stand out to you, that were like was like a really positive memory or like a favorite memory or something, and if you feel like sharing that in the comments, that would be super awesome. I love like getting to connect with people through sharing lived experiences. I think that's really fun, really interesting. So feel free to do that. I might record the 5 to 10 year uh, timeline video tomorrow, or it may be in a few days. I'm not too sure. It just depends on when I get the urge to do it. So, excuse me. So, yeah, but for now, that's the end of this video, and I will see y'all next time.